So good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending the career session today. This is our last of three sessions. If you're new here, my name is Alex. I am a graduate of the University of Waterloo in Ontario. I graduated in a degree in biomedical science. I also went to college in a joint program. I went to Conestoga College for biotechnology. Right now, I'm studying at the University of Toronto, and it's a joint program with Michener Institute. So I'm studying radiological technology, which is X-ray tech. So I take the X-rays at a hospital. I just recently worked at a hospital for 2 months. I took some extra, all the X-rays for all the patients there. So today's session, like I said, is the last of the three. It won't be as long as the other ones. It's just a very brief overview. So the goal of today's session is to discuss career options. So the idea here is that, well, what's the plan after university, right? So for the last two sessions, I talked about the university lifestyle. I think it is very important just to briefly introduce you guys to what you should expect after university. This is a big thing that I would have wanted someone to teach me when I was back in high school because I was just so focused on getting my degree that I didn't really spend the time to look at things or to look at what to do after university, right? So this is just gonna be very general, just maybe introduce you guys to things you might not know of. But the idea here is that as you go throughout your university career, you will meet people or you will attend maybe some workshops and you will start to learn about more career options and maybe things you're more interested in, okay? So we're going to start talking about postgraduate options. So postgraduate meaning after you graduate. So what are you going to do after you graduate? And then we're going to explore some programs. I'm going to talk a little bit about interviews because interviews are a big progress of this. And then my final words because this is the last session of the three. So this is going to answer the age-old question. So when you're growing up, someone always asks you, what do you want to be when you grow up? And if you look at the slide, it's very, back then you had probably had very general ideas. So maybe you wanted to be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, a police officer, an astronaut, or a basketball player, professional athlete. These are very well, as you went throughout school, you realize these are only a few jobs. There are actually so many professions out there. And what you're going to realize as you go throughout university is there's a profession for almost anything. And there is a profession out there that will suit your interests. So I don't want you guys to just lock in on these very generic um, jobs that we all know. Really spend the time while you're at university to really find some new options. There are many things that might interest you. I didn't even know there was such a thing as an X-ray technician when I was in university. The thought never crossed my mind that yes, people have to take X-rays at hospitals, and it is something I really enjoy now. So the idea here is that as you go throughout university, you'll discover new things and discover new interests and hopefully discover career paths that suit your interests. So a big question you might ask is why should we start planning now? You guys haven't even started your university or college yet. So why is it even important to even start looking past that? Well, I think it's important because a big thing here is that your time at university or college will go by fast. Believe it or not, those 4 years are going to go by very quick. Before you know it, you're going to be graduating and you're going to be at your graduation. A big thing too is you need to make sure you plan for the required prerequisites. So if you want to go, for example, if you want to become a dentist after, well, dentistry school, they require you to take certain courses in your undergrad. So you want to make sure that during your undergrad, you plan accordingly and you take the correct courses. I know many people that they thought they did all their courses in university. They wanted to graduate, but then they realized that they missed one for their postgraduate. So they said, "Wow, I want to go into this school, and I forgot to take this course." So they have to actually stay another term. That's something you don't really want to do. So yeah, it's very important to plan ahead. Also prerequisites for jobs. So if you're in a program where after graduation, you're just going to go straight into the workforce, you want to make sure you take the relevant courses that you can really boost on your resume, okay? Also, why should we start planning now? You can start job searching whenever you want, right? And whenever you have free time, it's always good to look at online to look at new career options or just to explore. Also, you want to form your backup plan. So this is something very important as well. I always think it's good to have a plan B. So for example, I wanted to go into a program called PA. It's called physician assistant. My backup plan was this. So it's always good to have a backup plan because of the coronavirus pandemic. The PA program wasn't taking applicants this year. So I had a backup plan. So it's always good to start forming your backup plan. It's always good to have something to fall back on if things don't work out. And also, why should you start planning now? It helps you gain a sense of direction. So this is what I just briefly mentioned before. While you're at university, you're so focused on just getting your 4 years done, right? It's so much more important to start thinking about what you're gonna do after that, because I know so many people that just graduated and are stuck, like don't have a sense of direction in life. They graduated, they got their degree, and now they're asking themselves, well, now what do I do with it, right? So it's always good before you graduate to start planning on what you want to do next, okay? Now, before we start talking about postgraduate programs, let me just talk to you guys about what certifications you have after undergrad. So after you graduate from university or college, what do you have to write on your resume? Well, from university, you have a bachelor's degree. If you take any minors, you'll have the minors or accreditations as well. So some programs say like if you take these 5 courses, we'll write something special on your resume. You'll have like a special certification. That's what accreditation is. If your program has co-op, you'll have that co-op work experience. And also a big thing as well is this is especially true for science. Your GPA sticks with you. So GPA meaning your grade point average, so your marks, okay? So your GPA, there are 2 ways to kind of describe your GPA. So cumulative GPA is all the courses you take throughout university, so all 4 years, okay? And major GPA is courses only in the described major. So if I'm in a science program, my major GPA would only be the science courses. It won't be that language course I decided to take for 1 year as an elective, or that's maybe that psychology course. It's only the science courses in the program. So that's the difference between major GPA and cumulative GPA, okay? And GPA, if you do have a good GPA, it is something you can write on your resume, right? It is a demonstration of your academic achievement. And a big thing too is a lot of postgraduate programs, their first way to cut off, which we'll talk about in a bit, is through GPA, okay? So if you graduate from college, instead of a bachelor's degree, you'll have a diploma. I do believe there are some minor options depending on the college you go to, your GPA as well, and you have relevant work experience. Some college programs have co-op as well. Some of them just give you like leads on jobs. So you have all of this experience under your belt after you graduate from undergrad, okay? So now you've graduated. Now, if you want to continue education, what are your options? Okay. So what is a postgraduate program? I said this before, it is a higher level of education. So after you graduate from university or college, you can attend a higher level of education, usually in the form of a master's or PhD. But then again, there are some professional schools like what I'm studying right now. So a professional school is a school that just teaches for certain professions. Okay. So for example, my school, which we'll talk about a bit, the Mishner Institute, they teach for only allied healthcare professions. This meaning like a lot of the jobs in a hospital that you might not know about, they teach just for those jobs only. It's not a master's or PhD program, okay? A big thing about postgraduate too is you need to understand if your program usually requires or doesn't require postgraduate education. So what do I mean by this? So for example, most engineering students, they graduate from 4 years and they work right away. They get a well-paying job right out of school and they go straight into the workforce. Unfortunately for science, this isn't really the case. The big thing about science is it's so generic. So you graduate with a um, bachelor's in science, but that doesn't make you really applicable for many jobs out there. You really have to attend postgraduate education. Um, that is a big thing a lot of kids or a lot of students going into science don't really know about, is that you will probably have to attend school after your undergrad. This is just mainly because of the job market available. So for example, if I graduate with a degree, I graduated from my degree in biomed, the only jobs applicable for me with that degree are just laboratory work, and it doesn't pay well. There's not a lot of room for growth. So a lot of people I know, almost everyone I know actually had to apply for postgraduate programs, okay? So here, depending on your program really, so for example, engineering, you don't really apply for postgraduate programs unless you want to get your master's or PhD. But science is really common. Almost everyone has to apply for a postgraduate program after, okay? So it's good to start planning for that. It's good to start planning for what career path you want to take, okay? The thing about postgraduate programs too is there's so many options available. Even myself, there are so many programs that I haven't heard about and I just continue to hear about when I meet new people or something and ask what they're studying. So really spend the time, throughout your undergrad. Just spend the time to research, right? It's always pays off to plan earlier, okay? So what we're going to do now is I'm going to introduce you to each of the types of postgraduate programs. So we're going to start with a master's degree. So what is a master's degree? So it's a higher level of education. So it demonstrates mastery in a specific area, okay? So unlike your undergrad, so if you go to a program for science, a master's degree will be very more specific. So for example, you graduate with a bachelor's in, for example, me, biomedical science. A master's degree will be something very specific, like environmental toxicology or something. It's a very specific field. It's a field that hopefully interests you. That's why you would choose the master's program, okay? Master's degrees, most are 2 years in length. A lot of them branch into a PhD program, meaning after you complete your master's, you go continue studying to get your PhD, which we'll talk about soon. Some master's degrees provide co-op. They are generally more expensive. Tuition is more than a normal undergrad just because of how it's a higher level of education. And master's degrees are typically course-based or thesis-based. Okay, so what does this mean? So if you look on the right side here, so a course-based master's, this will be like your undergrad where you sign up for courses, okay? You take courses. Each course has its own independent mark. You write an exam for each course, for example, and that's it, right? If you take like 2 years worth of courses, because most of these programs last 2 years, then you graduate with a master's degree. So that's a course-based master's. There are also thesis-based masters. So these are more research-based. So basically, a thesis-based master's, you conduct a thesis. A thesis is a big like research project. So basically, you do your own research. So you find an idea or a topic you want to do some research about, and you spend 2 years normally under the supervisor. So you have a supervisor that you work with, and you conduct the research. And at the end, you publish an article. Okay, you publish like a research article. And that research article is academic work, right? So I don't know if you're in high school and if you're writing like science lab reports and you have to find academic sources. A lot of these academic sources are from like master's students, for example, or PhD students, okay? Because that is the process of getting a thesis-based master's. Okay, so like I said, after a master's, the next level up in terms of higher education is a PhD. This is the highest level of education offered. So what is a PhD? You graduate as a doctor of the specific subject. So for example, if you have a PhD in physics, you are a doctor of physics, okay? That's the accreditation given to you. A lot of PhD programs might require you to do a master's. Like I say before, it's like you're working your way up. So you start at the bachelor's, you get a master's, and then you go get your PhD. That is a common route a lot of people take. PhDs are typically 4 years in length. Why is it way longer? Well, because it's an extensive thesis and research project. On the next slide, I have a brief overview of the the process of a PhD. Very expensive tuition as far as I'm aware, because it is the highest level of education offered. A big thing about PhD too is if you want to go into teaching at the university or college level, you will most likely need a PhD. So if you want to become a university professor, for example, like you want to teach the chemistry courses that you took in undergrad, you will need a PhD in the required area, okay? So here's just a general overview, like what is a PhD? Like how do you even do a PhD? Because a PhD isn't course-based. It's not like you sign up for courses and you take independent courses. A PhD is strictly research, okay? So as you see here, a normal PhD involves carrying out literature review. So you research an area of interest in your field. So for example, if I'm doing my PhD in environmental toxicology, which is like the studying of contaminants and pollutants, then I'll have to do a lot of research in that field first, okay? Then I conduct original research. So I work with my department. So normally you work with like a professor and you guys determine what you want to research about. So maybe you want to research about how this certain pollutant acts, acts or measuring certain levels of pollutant in local water sources, something like that. So you conduct the research. So you actually go out and do the research. This takes a long time. This is why PhDs take probably 4 years, they say, because you have to first do the research. You have to conduct your own research, which takes a long time. Then you have to produce a thesis. This is probably the biggest part. So this is that research article I was talking about. So this is where you present your findings, okay? Now you have to write it up and you submit it, okay? And then once you submit it, the last part of the PhD process is defending it. So what does that mean? Well, you present your work into a room with some very high level individuals, and they actually ask you questions on it. It's called defending it because they are trying to understand what you've done for your PhD, right? So they're going to ask you a lot of questions. You stand in the middle of the room for a few hours, you're talking to them and you're explaining what you've done, you're answering their questions, and that's called defending your PhD. And if you're successful in defending your PhD, because it's like a mark, they give a mark to it. If you pass it, then you graduate with your PhD, okay? So that's just the general process of a PhD. It might differ depending on what program you choose. But yeah, it's not something you really need to look that much into now, especially considering you haven't started undergrad yet, okay? So the last of the three options is going to a specialty school. So like I said, this is what I'm doing right now at the Michener Institute seen on the right. So what is a specialty school? There are some schools that teach a variety of specialized profession. So for example, if you want to become a chiropractor, there is a school that just teaches chiropractic work, okay? A big one, like I said, the school I'm going to in Toronto is the Michener Institute. They teach allied healthcare professions. So what are allied healthcare professions? So they're called allied because they really work together. They are really the core of a hospital, for example. They really do the things that a lot of people don't realize that have to be done, right? So at Michener, there are many programs, for example, diagnostic cytology. So what is diagnostic cytology? These are people that work in laboratories and they look at samples, okay? So for example, if someone has suspected lung cancer or something, they do a biopsy, meaning they open their lung and take a small piece of it, and then they bring it to the laboratory where people in diagnostic cytology will look at it under the microscope and say, hey, does this person have cancer or not, okay? Genetics technology, so this is looking at genes. This is a very popular thing that's been coming up. So basically like becoming a genetic counselor, for example. So these are people that, so for example, if people are expecting a kid, they'll meet with a genetics counselor and they can say, well, the mother has blue eyes, the dad has brown eyes. Based on this, your kid will have blue eyes, for example, or something, okay? It's a very popular thing that's really new. I don't know how the job market is for that. I know a lot of people that wanted to go into that, but there's not really a lot of career options for that as of now, okay? Another allied healthcare profession at the Michener Institute is ultrasound. So I sat in on ultrasound for a day. It's a machine they use to send sound waves to visualize images, just like X-rays, just X-rays use radiation and ultrasound uses non-ionizing sound waves, so it's harmless. Okay, so for example, pregnant mothers will go in and they'll want to see their baby on a monitor through ultrasound. Okay. Another career, respiratory therapist. So this is especially popular with COVID. So respiratory therapists are all about keeping ventilation to the lungs for people, okay? So for example, at the hospital with the COVID patients, they had trouble breathing. So the respiratory therapist will hook them up on a ventilator that'll help their lungs function, okay? And like I said too, specialty schools are more common in science. So for example, you graduate with a science degree and then you go into healthcare. Not that common in other fields, I'm pretty sure. So engineering doesn't really have a lot of specialty schools because you're most likely going to get a master's in that specific field, okay? A specialty school just teaches a certain profession. So you go study that program and you work as that profession. So it's a good idea that before you apply for specialty schools, you have to ask yourself, is this a career option? Is this a career path I want to take in my life, right? Because it's way more specific than other programs. So those are the a general overview of the three options. What does the application process look like? This is something you're going to learn a lot about in your third and fourth year at university, I'm pretty sure. So the way I broke it down here is in two main rounds. So basically, if you apply for a program, they usually do this 2-round system where, for example, 500 people apply. And after round 1, they let half of them go. They say, we don't want half of you, okay? And then after round 2, they say, well, we have 10 spots. We'll choose those 10 people from the second round, okay? So if you really want to get into a program, you have to go through all these rounds and you have to make it through these rounds. So the first step, Okay, so the first step in applying for one of these programs is you'll do it just like you apply for university. So you'll go on OUAC, for example, which is the Ontario University's Application Center. It's a website where you apply for school, and you can apply for that master's, PhD, or that specialty school on this website, okay? The application on this website asks you very generic questions. So it's mostly about your GPA. You have to send your transcript from university. So you can't lie about your marks. They will get your exact marks. You have to send them an official transcript. You have to tell them how much money you have or how much money you're earning, just so they know for OSAP purposes or government funded aided purposes. They won't ask a lot about the specific program in OUAC. Some programs will require you to do a supplementary application. So what is this? So if you apply for a program, you apply first to the OUAC, and then the program says, hey, we want to learn a little bit more about you. Fill out this booklet, okay? So the booklet will have a lot of information, a lot of questions, and this is more specific to yourself and the program, okay? So it's called a supplementary application because you do it in supplement to the main application on OUAC. So it'll ask more about your experience. You'll say, what's your work experience like? What courses have you taken in undergrad, right? What are your interests? Some programs won't have a supplementary application, and some will just use GPA for the first round. So, for example, if you apply for a program, some of them will say, to determine the first round, who makes it past the first round, we're just going to use GPA. So this is why, especially in science, it's really important to try to do well in your undergrad, because when you apply for postgraduate, your GPA does play a role, okay? I talked about this in the previous session. Unlike other programs, for example, engineering, for example, is one I know. A lot of companies after you graduate don't really look at your marks. They say, well, you graduated, we know you know the basics, we'll hire you, okay? So it's very different depending on what program you choose to go study, okay? So round one, like I said, you apply, you do the supplementary application. If there's not a supplementary application, they just use your marks, so you don't fill out anything else, okay? And then you get an email saying, okay, well, you made it past round one. Now we want to continue our process, and you've made it to round two. Now, round two is usually an interview, okay? Now, so the school will email you and saying, thank you for applying. You've made it past the first round. For the second round, we're going to do an interview. Can we arrange a time for an interview? Now, in science, there are two main types of interviews, which I'll talk about. So this is the one you guys probably know. It's a single interview. You just go in, you sit down, and you talk one-on-one with someone, okay? Usually that person you're talking to might be a professor from the program, if you're doing a master's, for example, or it might just be the center of acceptances at the school. So like some schools have people that just look at applications and choose who to accept, right? So maybe you're interviewing with one of them. A new thing, which is this was invented in Canada, actually, this method. It was invented by McMaster University, I think, and it's becoming much more common. So I thought I'd introduce you guys to it. It's called the MMI, okay? It's called the multi-mini interview. So what this is instead of sitting down and talking to one person, you're going to many stations, okay? So we'll talk about it on the next slide, okay? So first, let me just talk about the standard interview. This is what we all know. So you'll sit down, talk one-on-one, usually with an advisor or professor. Usually they'll ask you general questions about the program. A big thing here is you want to do your research before. So they might test you about the program. They might say, for example, how long is this program, right? Because they want to make sure you at least on the basics, or you actually done the research and this is something you want to go into, right? They want to see that you put in the effort and you're very passionate about what you're trying to get into. So do your research before. So do research about the program. So see what courses you're going to take while you're in the program, what areas you're going to study, okay, about future careers. So this is a very common question. They ask, what do you want to get out of this program, right? Where do you see yourself working with the degree you get from this program? So that's when it really pays off to do the research, and you can say, well, I know this is a career path that many people take after. I think it interests me, so I want to go to this program just to pursue a similar career path. Okay. Another very common question. So why do you want this program? You really just got to figure out an answer for that. I know a lot of people might just personally think to themselves, well, the jobs pay well, but that's not what they're looking for, right? You really just want to find a good answer for that, okay? My big tip for you in interviews, I'm not going to go deep into this because this is a long ways away. Be confident, okay? This is especially true if English isn't your first language, which I talked about before. A lot of the times there is no right or wrong answer, right? So they're not going to say, why do you want this program? And they're looking for you to say certain things. A lot of the times in interviews, they're looking at how you present your ideas, okay? They want to see how you form an idea and how you're able to communicate it with others. And that is just basically through practice and understanding good communication skills, okay? So this is a big idea I want you guys to just hopefully remember. Be confident, right? It's about how you present your ideas, not just how you answer the question, okay? If I have a good answer to the question, but I'm not able to articulate it right and communicate it well, they're not gonna be as happy as someone who doesn't have a good answer and is able to communicate it very well, okay? Now let's talk about the MMI. So like I said, this is a new type of interview being seen very in a lot of places now. It is taking over the standard interview because people believe this is a better way to interview students. It's called the MMI, the multi-mini interview. So basically what the name, it is what the name is. You're doing multiple interviews, but they're small interviews, okay? So my school had something like this when I applied. A lot of schools do it for postgraduate science programs. What is it? So it's multiple stations, and at each station you do an activity. So you see down here in this photo, this is an example of an MMI. So there are all these rooms here, and on the door of the room is a paper, and a paper will have instructions, okay? And whatever it could be many things. So it could be a variety of activities on that paper. So examples I've seen or a drawing station. So you go up and you say, um, you're gonna work with a partner. One of you is gonna look at the photo, one of you is gonna draw, and the person looking at the photo has to try to describe to the person drawing how to draw it, okay? Because the person drawing can't see the photo. That was a common one I've seen. The goal about that is to see how you're able to communicate ideas again, right? How are you able to describe the photo and how well is that person able to draw based on the ideas you tell them, okay? A common one too is a teamwork station. So they'll pair you up with someone random and say, you guys have to work through this problem together. And they want to see how well you work with others. An acting station. So this is, this is where you really have to be confident, and it can be uncomfortable at sometimes, but they'll have paid actors. Okay. So you go in, sometimes the paper on the door will say, go in and act accordingly to the scenario. So you go in and maybe there's this actor and she's screaming, right? And you just have to act. So you walk up and say, well, what's wrong? What's going on, right? And you just have to do what you would normally do. And they just want to, they're trying to observe how do you react in these situations, okay? That's very similar to like a scenario question. So on paper, it'll write down like, you are a doctor, someone comes in with this, how would you respond? Okay, on the next slide, I have examples of my MMI questions. They're very scenario based. Lastly, a very common one is a question station. So this is very common. Tell us about yourself, or tell us a time you had to deal with adversity. That's a one I've seen a lot, okay? So again, just like the standard interview, there is no right answer. This is much more important for the MMI because there is no right answer to any of these, okay? So whenever you go to any of these stations, there is no right answer. They just want to see how your thought process, they want to learn about your thought process and how you react given certain situations, okay? So this is just a very brief overview and introduction to the MMI. It's something you will see a lot in your career if you're in science and you're applying to postgraduate programs. I just want to introduce it to you because I know in other countries probably they don't even have something like this. It was made in Canada. The idea was thought of in Canada, and a lot of schools are adopting it here. So it is something you should be introduced to. And then again here, this is an example. So all these are students. Each of these is its station. So they give you 30 seconds, for example. They say, okay, 30 seconds, read what's on the paper. And the paper will have a bunch of instructions. And then they say, go in the room, and then you do whatever you have to do. Okay. It is very stressful. Your school will offer practice for this, which is a big thing I want to mention as well. I went to a lot of practice for this. So my career center, they did a lot of practice where they set up a mock MMI. They'll have one, but it's not for anything, right? It's just for practice, and you actually get a practice with real questions, okay? So when I applied for my program, because of COVID, we had to do an MMI kind of online where I had to record my responses to the questions. So these were my questions that I got. Okay. So this is just, don't try to answer these, just see the variety of questions. So the first one, give an example when you had to work with someone who was difficult to get along with. How did you handle interactions with that person? So when you look at this question, they give you 30 seconds to think, and then they say, okay, start your answer. Okay, so you really have to think on the spot. You really have to develop your ideas quickly, and communicate them well. Now, this question is mainly a personal question. It's asking you just about yourself and your past experiences. If you look at question 2, this is more of a scenario type question. So Mrs. Jones has come to the emergency department with an asthma attack, okay? She is to be examined by a senior medical student before the attending physician. Mrs. Jones refuses to allow the medical student to examine her. The attending physician agrees to her request and examines Ms. Jones independently without the medical student. Please discuss the ethical considerations regarding patient participation in medical educational activities. And you're looking at this and you're saying, wow, that is a lot to respond to. This is where it really pays off to do your practice before, because if you attend practice sessions, they really cover topics like this. Patient rights, right? If you're going into healthcare, it is important to know the rights of a patient, the confidentiality, privacy, stuff like that. Okay. And yeah, so this is an example of a scenario type question. Another question I have, this is more of a personal type question, like the first one. Can you think of an example of when you had to make a tough choice that affected other people's lives? Okay, and what did you learn from that experience? So this is what I said. There is no right answer to this. This is a personal question. They want to hear about you. They're just looking at how you formulate your ideas. A big thing too is, do you even answer the question? So what if I just describe an example, but I don't answer the second part? What did I learn from that experience? They're not going to be happy, right? The interviewers, they want to make sure you answer both questions and formulate your response well, okay? Now, like I said before, postgraduate is way more common in some programs than others, for example, science compared to engineering. So what about the other programs that just want to apply for jobs right out of the bat? Job search takes a long time, requires you to spend months in advance just looking for jobs, especially now given the coronavirus pandemic when the job markets aren't as good as they were before. Um, Applying through jobs in Canada, most jobs you apply for online. So LinkedIn is a good one, right? LinkedIn is kind of like a social media, but a professional social media where you connect with people in workplaces. Your school's websites. So when you graduate from, for example, U of T, they'll have a job board just for graduates from U of T. So that's a good way to find a job because it's a less people that can apply for it, right? It'll be like an alumni. So when you graduate, you're called an alumni, meaning like you were a previous student. They will have an alumni job board. So jobs just for alumni. So that's a good place to look. Indeed, for example, there's all these websites. Google has jobs on it. Indeed is a big one, Workopolis. A big thing too, which I keep on stressing, and this has really helped me, is the school's career center. Okay, so your school will have services where they can help you find jobs, they can help you create a resume, um, attend workshops. For example, that MMI I talked to you about, they have practice for that, which is very good to go to. They can help you with your public speaking, how to formulate your response to these questions, and this career center will have job postings as well. Okay. Also, if you're with the ELC, my mother works there, and she helps with the career advising. So I don't know if any of you guys have met her or have worked with her, but I'm pretty sure the ELC too offers services that can help you prepare for jobs, right? Interviews and formulating good resumes. Okay. So again, I really want to stress how important the school's career center is. The best place to find any resource, whether it's looking for a job, how to prepare for MMIs, how to prepare for interviews, resume help. Okay. It's all free. So you just go on the website and you book an appointment. Okay. And you'll meet one-on-one usually, or you attend a workshop. Okay. You can find many opportunities there. A big thing too is a lot of students don't use this resource. So maybe you have an advantage if you go and use it because maybe there won't be that many applicants, okay? It's free as long as you're a student of that school, okay? And like I said, a lot of help with anything, with resumes and interviews. You can book one-on-one meetings with career advisors. They've been pretty helpful from my experience with them. So you meet, and for half an hour, they'll just help you. So they'll say, well, what are you trying to do? And for me, it was, I want to learn more about postgraduate programs. So this is their job. So my career advisor, she opened a book and she says, here are all the postgraduate programs. Let me look at the courses you've taken and um, let me see which ones you can apply to based on what you've taken at school, okay? And then they might make you do some personality tests or stuff. They say, well, let's do some tests and maybe we'll find out what areas of interest suit your career needs, okay? And again, they have really good workshops. The big thing about the thing about the workshops though, they're held on weekends, and I know people want their own time on the weekend. So really plan ahead. They do book up quick too, the workshops. Sometimes they don't have a lot of spots. So um, really plan ahead for the workshops. It really does pay off to even attend one workshop just to get that exposure. Okay, so in your third or fourth year, really just maybe find when they're doing a workshop. And if you're free one weekend, so maybe after midterms when you just have to wait for exams, attend the workshop, okay? Just one won't hurt, and it's very beneficial, okay? I've had really good experience with the workshops, okay? So a big thing I talked about in the other session as well is, well, what if you do want to change programs or your career pathway? So what if you want to change programs? So what if you're second year in science and you say, science isn't for me, I want to go into arts? It is easier than you think. So you just contact your career or your academic counselor. So your school will have an academic counselors for you. They're responsible for managing all the courses you take and helping you plan your courses you take at university. And I talked about this in the last session. They'll help you switch programs as well. It's not a hard process. From my experiences, my friends' experiences, I'm pretty sure for when you change programs, so you make an appointment, they look at your marks and they say, yeah, you'll do well in this program. Fill out this form and we'll get back to you. You fill out the form, they contact you back saying, yeah, a spot opened in the program. Do you want to switch for next term? And then you say yes if you want to. And then next term you're in that program and you take different courses, okay? You might need higher marks. So for example, if you're trying to go from science, which still requires higher marks, but if you want to go into a very competitive program like engineering, they're going to look at the courses you've taken already. So if you're in a science program and you're not doing well in your grades, they're not going to let you switch into engineering because they're going to say, well, engineering is a harder program. We see here you've not been doing well in science. So we don't think you're going to do well in engineering. So we're not going to let you switch, okay? So if you're switching between disciplines, you might need certain marks. If you're, if you're switching between programs, if you're switching between disciplines, so what does this mean? So if you're still staying in science, you're just switching your specialty. So for example, if you're going from biomed to biochem, they're both within science. It's a very easy process. It's way easier than switching programs in general, like general programs. This one, you just meet with them and they say, yeah, biochemistry just takes these other chemistry courses. We'll switch you right away, okay? It's much easier to switch within your program than to switch between programs, okay? Now, a big idea that I've stressed before, and I really want to stress again, there is a general stigma that switching programs or changing career pathways is a bad thing to do. There is this false idea that if you take longer to graduate or if you switch out of a program, then you've been unsuccessful, okay? And I really don't want you guys to have that thinking. I know many people that switched and they say it was the best decision of their life, okay? Because they switched, they found something that really works for them and they're really enjoying what they do now, okay? And this goes back to, again, the idea that you shouldn't want to race through university. If you have to switch programs and you have to take another year of school, it's much more beneficial to do that than to stick with a program you don't like, have to work a job you don't like for the rest of your life, okay? So there's nothing wrong with changing programs or career pathways, okay? I think a big thing too is for our generation, we are going to have to change our jobs a lot once we work in the workplace. That is what a lot of people have been saying. I know, for example, our parents or the younger generation, the older generation before us, a lot of them have been at their job for 20 years, for example. Okay, unfortunately for our generation, because of the change in movement in career options and stuff, a lot of people think that throughout your life you are going to change career pathways a lot. And this is something that's becoming more normal. And I really don't want you guys to look at this in a negative way, okay? The quote I have here is just a famous one you probably heard. So the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. Yes, it would have been good to switch way long ago, but the second best time is now. So rather make the choice now than regret the choice and have to make it within a year, okay? So there's nothing wrong with changing programs. I really want to stress this to you guys, okay? Now, this is the last of our 3 sessions with you, with the ELC and me here with you guys. So just before we end off, I know this was a very brief one, very brief introduction to a lot of things. Just a few things I want to stress again. Um, my final words, this is what I would want to tell myself if I could talk to myself before I went to university, okay? This is really what I learned throughout university. My university and college was honestly the best time of my life. I had the most experiences. You really meet people that you really connect with well because you're studying the same interests. I have met some lifelong friends at university and college, and I really enjoyed my time there looking back on it, okay? But then again, there have been some times there where it has been difficult for me, okay? And it will be difficult for you, okay? So for example, exam time or stuff or personal issues or something, there will be times where it will be difficult, okay? That is a given. But above all, your mental and physical health take priority, okay? So if you have to, um, if for example you have to study less for an exam to catch up on sleep because you're sleep deprived, don't look at that as a bad thing, okay? Your mental and physical health take priority over everything, especially mental health, given how there have been a lot of, for example, suicide cases at Canadian universities, okay? Please take care of your mental health and find the resources at your school available to you, okay? A big thing too I want to tell you guys is to focus on yourself. So this was a big thing for me. This is what I would tell myself. I always looked at my classmates and saw what they were doing and thought I wasn't doing enough, okay? I looked at them, saw their accomplishments, and I felt insignificant to them. That isn't a way you should be looking at things, okay? Um, don't let the accomplishments of others make you feel insignificant. The person that you should be focusing on only is yourself, okay? Focus on self-improvement. And a big thing here too, goes back to that quote I said from the last session, comparison is the theft of joy. It really takes away from your own confidence if you're always comparing yourselves to others and looking down on yourself, okay? This is something I hope you guys learn throughout your university career and really start to develop as the years go on. The last thing too is please have fun throughout university. Don't just stay all the time studying. Really, like I talked about in the last session, spend the time to try new things, meet new people, have new experiences, especially if you're new to the country. There's so many things you can do in Canada that maybe aren't available in Korea or wherever you're from, right? So really just enjoy your university career, okay? School is one thing, but having a personal life and developing yourself as a character is just as important, okay? And a big thing too is it'll be over before you know it. So I know you're very nervous right now. Given 2 weeks, so 2 weeks into school, you'll be fine. You'll be comfortable. And next thing you know, it's going to be the first term done and then the first year done. And then you're going to be at your graduation. Okay. It's going to go by very fast. That's why I really want you to have fun and enjoy it along the way. Okay. Um, I appreciate everyone that has been here for any of the sessions or has stayed with us today. Is there any questions? Not even about this session, but about anything that anyone wants to ask? Again, I think my email, yes. Okay, so my email is up here. So please write it down. If it's years down the line or months or weeks, email me. Just say you're from the ELC and you have questions. I'll be more than happy to help, okay? It could be about anything. If you need help for a specific school, finding resources, I can help you search for the right resources, okay? If you need to connect with someone from the school, I can try to contact people I know from it, okay? So please write down my email here, and email me if you need anything, okay? Um, I really hope these sessions have helped you guys. This is like honestly what I would want to tell myself as a high school student going into university, because I was in your situation as well. It is very nervous. It is a lot at once, but I hope I was able to help you guys ease the nerves and learn a thing too about post-secondary education. So I appreciate everyone coming out to these meetings. And yeah, if you have any questions, just feel free to email me, okay? Also, a big thank you to Yuna as well for helping organize this. She did a lot of the organizational stuff and checking over my presentations and stuff. So I appreciate that.
Actually, thank you for like doing this for like high school students here.
Yeah,
I'm
no
pretty
worries.
sure
I hope it was helpful for everyone here.